Sylvia said, I had to announce when I'm filming.
Thank you for announcing that. We'd like to know.
Well, I know it's a rule, thank you.
And Sharon is also using our Sweeney videotape equipment.
Excellent.
Yeah, so there we go. All right, one thing I'd like to say, at our meeting last Tuesday, we had some simple rules, ground rules for communicating with each other. I just want to go over those again today. I have found them in many other places where the city's holding meetings, so they're not special to us, and that is so that we're remaining fair, respectful, and productive in talking with each other. Speak when you're called upon. You're limited to 1 minute unless you're presenting a motion, and then you have 2 to 3 minutes to present your motion. Listen respectfully without interruptions or assumptions, and with an open mind, and refrain from personal attacks, repetitive arguing, venting, and narration, focusing instead on finding positive solutions that will benefit the entire organization. As far as making comments or whatever work that we're doing, I won't call on people, and everybody will get 1 opportunity to speak. And if it seems appropriate, then we'll allow seconds, but mostly I think you can probably say what you want to say in 1 minute. At least that would be the best approach. So the meeting is called to order, and I think what I'd like to do is ask for a motion to approve the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Okay, second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstaining? Okay, good. All right, let's do our introductions first, and we'll start with Charlie.
Charlie Van Rossen, Treasurer and Swirl Member.
Sylvia Bogert, Executive Director.
Janet Hawkins, Hayhurst Neighborhood.
Jackie Phillips, Homestead Neighborhood.
David Martin, Transportation Committee.
George Reynolds, North South Hills.
Mary Pat Hensel, Schools Committee.
Steve Molex, Parks and Community Centers Committee, Bridle Mile resident.
Gary Rundy, Land Use Committee, West Portland Park Neighborhood resident.
I'm Debbie Hall, West Portland Park.
Sam Pearson, Recording Secretary at this time, acting.
Marie Tyball, Hillsdale.
Dylan was on, Hayhurst.
You want to say who you are, Sharon?
Sharon Keith, I'm filming for Sweeney.
Right, she's staff today, yeah.
Kim Silverman, Public Safety Committee Chair.
Laura Campos, Equity and Inclusion Committee.
Don Bach, Hillsdale and Professional Association.
Robert Lennox, South Burlingame Neighborhood Association.
Michael Kaiser, representing Ash Creek tonight, substituting for Bruce.
Thank you, Lily Quist with Bridle Mile.
Sir?
Keith Johnson, Indian Far Southwest.
All right. Michael, I think there's a spot here for you.
Apologies for the tardiness. Traffic was entertaining trying to get here.
We're up to your introduction.
You get to say who you are and who you're representing.
Hi, I'm Mike Lindman. I am sitting in for Ron Berrien tonight. I represent the Maplewood neighborhood.
Katie Bailey, I'm sitting in for Sharon Keast, I'm representing Arden Creek.
I'm Murphy Terrell. I'm in Multnomah Neighborhood Association Watershed Chair.
Maria T. Mai, Multnomah Neighborhood Association. Catherine Christensen, and I'm Second Vice President and part of the Multnomah Neighborhood.
Leslie Hammond, President of Sweeney, part of Hayhurst and Multnomah. All right, we have, I'm going to stand up just so I can keep track of everything. We have 3 sets of minutes to approve tonight. We have the minutes from September 25th, which is our regular Sweeney meeting. We have the minutes from, let's see, October 15th, which is our special meeting on the motion for equity from last week. And we have minutes that we were required to keep for the special meeting called for the facilitation on Saturday. So I hope people all had a chance to look at those. And so I know they weren't posted as quickly as you might like. So if you have things that you know or want considered, please speak up, because these are minutes that belong to all of you and should reflect what you think actually happened in the meeting. Let's go to September 25th. Do I have a motion to approve the September 25th minutes?
I have an edit that I'd like to point out, and it is on page 6. Well, it says page 5, but it's handwritten page 6. Under the Equity and Inclusion Committee, second sentence, it begins with, the board asked why the racial policy shouldn't be broadened. That was Charlie. was not the board.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Are you there? Okay.
I would agree with that.
Okay, let's
And
modify.
I will also amend, it should say racial equity policy.
You're right.
Okay, any
Yes.
other amendments to these minutes? All right. All in favor of approving the September 25th? Sorry. We did have a motion, I thought we did have a motion.
No.
Oh,
Move
I'm
for
sorry.
approval.
Could I have a motion to
I
approve the
move for
minutes?
approval.
Steve and Dave, first and second.
As modified.
As
As
modified.
modified.
As modified.
Right. All right. All in favor of approving the minutes as modified, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Okay,
I
we
wasn't
several.
here.
Gary Rendy, Dylan, Don Bach, Rob Lennox, Michael Kaiser, Becky, and Mike Lindman. They all weren't here. All right. Let's move on to the second set of minutes, which begin on page 8. This is the minutes from the special meeting on the equity motion. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? If we have a motion to approve in a second, then we can discuss them.
Motion approved.
Okay, Dave and Catherine. Let's make sure Sam gets it. All right. Any amendments, comments on the minutes from the 15th?
I've got a question. Can Janet vote on my behalf, since I was not here and she stood, was there on my behalf?
I don't see why not.
She can advise you how to vote.
Okay.
She
Do
can't
they
since
look good to
you're
you?
not here. Okay.
And 19?
All right. Any other questions or comments? All in favor of approving the minutes from October 15th, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining?
One,
Okay,
I
well,
wasn't
there's
there.
several. There's
Yeah.
Murphy, there's Rob, there's Kim, and there's Debbie Hall, and Mike Lindman, and Becky. Let's wait till Sam gets that down. Okay. Let's move on to the October 19th minutes. One comment on this, since it was a special meeting, we had to keep minutes, and Sylvia and I consulted about what those minutes should be, and essentially decided the minutes ought to reflect the list of topics that the board addressed, and then the conclusions they came to. That would be the better way to have a set of minutes from that meeting. I need a motion to approve these.
Point of information first?
Yeah.
Was there any motions or votes passed in this meeting?
No,
Okay, so there's no business was
everything
conducted?
was done on consensus basis.
So there's no business really conducted in the meeting?
Not business like
Okay.
we're talking about, right?
Yeah,
Just
okay.
discussion. Yeah, it was just discussion. Okay, so do I have a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
We need a motion.
You can't just say it, right?
No.
Motion to approve those minutes.
A second?
I'll second.
Gary's gonna second. Okay, comments on these minutes? Take a look at them. Some of you may not have seen them. If you were at the meeting, what?
So I have 2 comments, so
Okay.
I can stall while everybody else takes
All right.
a look at them.
All right.
I thought it was fun, but direct comments, agreements on ideas. Number 2, get agendas out early, at least a week in advance. I think it's important to mention that there was a lot of discussion about recognizing that if you insist on having them a week in advance, you may not have all the information, because we know the city drops information on us rather suddenly. So if something happens within that week, that agenda may not reflect it.
And we
Consequences.
caught
Yeah.
that in the language that says except for good cause.
But there are consequences. I do
Yes.
remember that. I can remember.
Yeah.
Okay.
And number 17, which was my idea, develop a Dropbox for each committee. And it was not intended to be for emails, it was meant for their input and output, so that other board members could go to that electronic Dropbox and see what they're working on, so things aren't a surprise at a board meeting. So those are my 2 comments.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other comments, Marie?
Yeah, I just wanted to note for the record that I just literally, in the last couple of hours, sent corrections to these minutes.
I beg your pardon, what did you say?
We just couldn't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, in the last couple of hours, I emailed corrections to these minutes.
Do you have them
So I
with you?
just wanted to note, well, yeah, they're on my computer.
Well, do you,
Who
this is
did you
the
mail
time to
it
raise
to,
them.
the person who took the minutes?
I sent them to Sylvia, neighborhood chairs, and the board. I wasn't really sure who to send them to.
Pass of them.
Yeah,
I
I
can't,
sped read them before I jumped in the car to come over.
What would be the process, I guess? Would be,
Hand them to the
Well,
person
we can
who-
read those corrections now and go through them. And why don't you go ahead and use your computer to do that, or your phone, whatever you've got, because I don't have them, I haven't seen them. I did see the correction on the finance committee minutes, but those aren't for consideration tonight.
44 minutes ago, 40, yeah, minutes ago.
I had a comment, Leslie, a real quick comment about the minutes.
What?
I had a quick comment about the minutes.
All right, well, she's finding it, go ahead, Laura.
Well, we also mentioned at the meeting that the equity committee sometimes meets on the Monday before the Wednesday of the board meeting. So that means the motion, if we took any motion, it would have to wait another month. So that's just,
This isn't a hard and fast rule yet, Laura, it's something to be discussed. This is what people wanted to do, but we haven't changed any bylaws or anything like that yet. Rob?
The agenda can be revised the day of the meeting, so
Yes.
it's not
yeah,
like,
I would think.
it's not like it's a hard, fast agenda, we just need to put out so people understand
Right.
what's going on, so.
I would say, and I hope Sylvia agrees, we try to put out a sort of a, what we call preliminary agenda on the Friday before the Wednesday of the Sweeney meeting. And then we have people that come in with motions on Monday and Tuesday, so we have to make an adjustment, or something else happens that seems like in a timely sense, we need to put on the agenda, so we do make adjustments to the agenda. We definitely do.
But I can see what Laura's saying is there's consistently going to be a problem between the equity committee and the board. So when we look at this, we're gonna have to remember that.
Right. Okay, all right. Do you have what you want as corrections on the October 19th minutes?
yeah, so should I just read the whole thing?
Yes, please, so they can be in the record.
Whatever you want in the record.
Oh, okay. Hi, Sylvia. I am submitting this correction to the meeting minutes of the October 19th meeting. Here are the specific meeting minutes I am referring to that require correction. And I put these in italics. Categories, number 4, handling of minutes. Bullet 3, must comply with bylaws. I respectfully request that the minutes be corrected to reflect the following. Marie Tyval commented at the meeting on October 19th that she is concerned that Sweeney is at risk because we consistently do not follow our bylaws or civic life standards of practices. Marie made the comment that she finds it egregious that the people in the room on October 19th are silent on this issue. Paragraph. She made comments, open paren, captured on video, close paren, that her concerns have nothing to do with the current categories listed on the blackboard, but belong in a separate category above all of the categories since they are strategic in nature and have to do with leadership. However, Melanie refused to create a separate category for Marie's comments and chose to summarize Marie's comments with this phrase, in italics, must comply with bylaws, and place it under the 4th category. Marie would also like to note that everyone's comments were added to the blackboard by Melanie with the exception of hers. Thank you for your consideration. Best.
Okay, this is an amendment to what the minutes are. Do you wish to, so Marie's giving you her amendments that she thinks should be added to the minutes from October 19th. So what, as I understand the Robert Rules of Order, we need to vote on the amendment, and then we would vote on the entire set of minutes.
We would,
Discussion? Let's have a discussion on the amendment first. Steve?
The amendments as a whole, I don't see any problem with. I also would respect Marie's desire to have hers added verbatim. They're attributed to her, so there's no question about where they're coming from.
Okay, anybody else? Kim?
Well, I have a question, and then maybe a point of discussion.
Okay.
The question is, typically, when minutes are taken, minutes document what happened and are not interpretation or commentary on what happened.
Right.
So I guess whether I continue requires an answer of what are we aiming at with minutes here?
Well, we've got two different points of view, meaning that Marie has commented on what happened as opposed to just saying what happened.
Right, and so.
And your point is that appropriate or not?
Well, I guess my question is, are we supposed to put people's individual interpretations in as minutes? Because, for example, this is sort of charged, like Melanie's refusal. From my perspective, Marie missed the point of the question. Melanie's question was, what would you like to see? And Marie made an allegation against not only the board, but everyone in the room, and said we were complicit in silence. And so, yes, that happened, but it was not responsive to Melanie's question and includes a bunch of commentary.
Right. Our minutes are supposed to reflect what actually happened, what the issue is, the vote, and usually a sentence or two on the issue, if there's a sub-issue or that kind of thing. They aren't to be journalistic or commentary in that sense. So I'd say we don't normally do that.
So I guess I agree that that happened, and if we could include a line that says, from Marie's perspective, comma, then I would
You
support
would
that.
include her,
Yes.
her comments. Any other comments or, yes, I'm sorry, Michael.
Yeah, so generally speaking, if you want your comments included in the minutes, it's best to say, please let the minutes show before you make your comments.
Okay, so future, very good point, okay. Rob?
Go ahead, Gary.
Oops.
Okay. No, I was a board member there, and thank you, Kimberly. I think I can go with the way you set it up.
Rob?
So in this meeting, I'm sure you guys didn't call it, but this is really a committee of the whole. And a committee of the whole doesn't have to have real strict minutes. You should have called it as a committee of the whole. You weren't doing business, and it would be more ran like a committee than like a vote, counter vote, debate. So anyway, just my observation is that some of these discussions can be, you use Robert's rules to abbreviate the decisions.
Almost all of the, whether it's committee or the board, uses Robert's Rules of Order because that's what our bylaws say. There was nothing that I knew about in terms of calling a committee of the whole. It wasn't committee of the whole. We had some people that were missing. So I don't know whether it meets that.
Committee of the whole just means that I'm gonna hold this whole room as a committee.
Right. We
And
didn't
at
do
that point, what?
We didn't do that.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that you could. It would help you in these meetings.
Thank you.
It's information.
I
That's
appreciate,
all
I
I'm
appreciate,
saying.
no, I
Because we're
appreciate it.
getting confusion on what we're trying to,
Right.
business we're trying to do here.
Right. All right, any other comments on Marie's amendments to the minutes? Okay. All right, all in favor of approving the minutes as amended, say aye.
Aye.
I think we're gonna do this by hand. All in favor of approving the minutes as amended, raise your hand. Here we have-
What's the amendment, I'm sorry?
The amendment
she
is the
read.
addition of Marie's comments.
Okay, so not as modified by okay, so as Marie did it.
It should be attributed to Marie in the amended minutes.
But that's not what the motion is.
I'm not sure what because I think there was clarification, so
Good point. Sam, why don't you tell us where you think we are?
We've had so many people talk on it.
Okay,
I have basically I have what Marie sent to the board.
right.
And that's the amendment.
Being
Yeah, that is.
the amendment.
And then Kim wanted it amended to say.
She'd have to
what did you-
formally do
She
that.
had a further amendment.
I didn't hear a motion for that.
It wasn't
So-
It wasn't changes.
You wanna make a motion?
I do move that we include the words from Marie's perspective when she's editorializing.
All right. Is there a second to that motion?
I second it.
Okay. All right, so Robert's Rules of Order say you take your most recent amendment. So that's what we're gonna vote on. We're gonna vote on Kim's addition to Marie's comments. all in favor of adding the words from Marie's perspective to, excuse me, all in favor of adding the words from Marie's perspective to Marie's comments, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. Then it's, any abstaining? Okay. Is that because you don't understand the question?
Or they weren't present.
I wasn't at the meeting.
Wasn't present at the meeting.
Thank you. All right, we've got Charlie, we've got Mike, we've got Becky, we've got Michael, we have Rob, we have,
Just go slow, please.
okay, sorry, we have Charlie, Mike Lindman, Becky Lillianquist, Michael Kaiser. Did you
I
abstain?
wasn't, I'm staying,
Okay,
yeah. Robert
Rob
Lennox.
Lennox,
Sorry.
Nancy Seaton,
wasn't at the meeting.
Don Bach, I mean, he's not quite ready yet, Don Bach, and Laura Campos, and Debbie Hall, and George. George, how do you say your last name?
Varanus.
Varanus, thank you.
Depends where you're from in the country.
Right, exactly. And Jack, okay.
So,
So,
that doesn't pass, does it?
Abstains don't count as a majority.
We have to vote here. All
okay,
those in favor?
all those in favor, say aye.
No.
Raise your hand.
Raise your hand.
Raise your hand, okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes as amended with Kim's amendment? Okay.
It wouldn't matter to vote on the amendment.
We did.
We already did.
That's what we
So
did.
you voted on the
amendment to the
I thought- Okay, so we voted on Kim's and that passed, right?
Correct.
Okay, so now we're voting on Marie's amendment to amend the minutes with her comments. All
Have we
right.
forgotten about mine? Just asking.
No,
No.
because Sylvia and I are gonna make sure they get incorporated. Thank you. All right, so now we're voting on, do we include Marie's comments to the minutes or not? All in favor, raise your hands. Okay, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. In favor? Those opposed, raise your hands. Any abstaining? Yes, of course. We have a sea of abstentions. Okay,
They're the same. They're the same.
okay. So, did anybody abstain from this vote that abstained? Okay, Dave Martin wants to abstain. Okay, good, all right. All right, so now we have to, I'm gonna ask for a vote on the minutes as a whole, including
As amended.
as amended.
What about
Katie,
discussion?
and
Others.
including Katie Daly's improvements to the minutes, okay? All right. All in favor of approving the minutes as amended, plus including the Katie's comments at the beginning, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those abstaining?
It's the same.
And the same as before, plus Dave Martin. Okay.
Woo.
Jackie?
I'd like to ask a question on what the proper procedure would be expected of us to submit changes to minutes so that, are we expected to appear at the meeting and
Oh, good question.
explain our?
I honestly, although I've been sleeping with Robert's Rules of Order, I can't say I've absorbed everything from the book. I don't know the answer to that.
Maybe
And
someone
we'd have to
will.
look at the bylaws, and we'd have to look at what Robert's Rules of Order say. So may I answer your question online later?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, you can make a motion to amend at the meeting as we just did.
Right.
So,
But
but
she was asking, can you do it online and not come to the
Well,
meeting?
I'm just asking what this board expects is the appropriate way, that we want to
in
receive.
the past, when I was the rep for Ash Creek, I tried to make sure I had the amendments emailed in advance of the meeting so that it could be distributed.
Right.
Then you have to get the minutes.
I
more
will
than
say this.
2 hours.
We had 3 sets of minutes. It was tough to actually, number one, get them written, reviewed,
But I was just
and then
responding
post.
to what.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. Thank you, Michael. All right. So, we've gotten through our sets of minutes, and now we have the president's report. And I'm gonna try to be sort of quick on this, but before I do my full report, I am happy to report we have someone who has volunteered to be Sweeney's secretary, and that is Janet Hawkins. motion and ask you to approve her as our secretary for the remainder of the year.
So moved.
Thank you.
So I'm Janet Hawkins, I chair Hayhurst Neighborhood Association. I'm a past member of the Sweeney Board. It's been about 5 years since I've been on the board. And I volunteered to do this because I think Sweeney does wonderful work. And I'm very committed to trying to get minutes out early and all those things. And I completely appreciate Sam taking on the role. In my past career, I worked for Multnomah County for 30 years. City of Salem, staffed the Human Rights Commission and took minutes, agendas, and did all kinds of program information. For 30 years with Multnomah County, I worked with the Commission on Children and Families and the Community Development Block Grant Program with policy and planning advisory groups and took minutes, notes, made agendas, all those kinds of things. So I have a work background in doing this work as well. Thank
Okay,
you.
all in favor of approving Janet to act as...
Discussion.
All right, is there discussion on this?
I have a question. Oh.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Dylan, go ahead.
Janet, what is your preference when it comes to taking minutes? Do you prefer to have very detailed records, or do you like to do sort of, here's what the topic was, we discussed it, and if there's any action, sort of capture the action?
Yeah, generally, I actually refresh my memory with Robert's rules. So nonprofit organizations, we can capture comments, capture larger discussion, particularly as Michael pointed out, if you limit the minutes to read, I would like this recorded in the minutes. That's typically one of the approaches I would use. And then certainly coming back to the group, are the minutes acceptable? Did you get what you needed? I would actually, Sylvia and I set up a meeting for Friday morning to talk about minutes and to do a review. So hopefully that answers that question in terms of...
I'm going to piggyback on that and take a slightly different point of view. Having sat through 2.5 years of working with this organization in officer position, I would like to see our minutes be a little briefer. The point, the issues that were raised, and you can have an issue raised and you can have another issue raised. You want those issues all raised, but not include a lot of the discussion, then have the motion and then the vote on the motion. Because it takes a great deal of time to prepare the minutes, and most people come to these meetings so you know actually what happened. So I would like to see them err more on a more discreet side, if that's possible. Okay. Other discussion? Rob?
Mike, honestly, thank you for doing that volunteering, because it's a tough position, and I know it's really hard. My main concern, though, is that this puts 2 Hayhurst people on the executive committee.
I beg your pardon? What'd you say?
You're from Hayhurst, right? You're on the board of, both of you are on the board of Hayhurst? is that
Our
correct?
bylaws allow that. Lots of people have.
I didn't
swear
say
to
it,
that.
didn't. You're interrupting me, so if I could continue. It puts
I
2.
didn't hear you, that's why I
Okay.
interrupted you.
Well, you rebutted me, so that's fine. So there's 2 people that from Hayhurst in this committee, and that's 2 of 5. I know at least almost 30% of our neighborhood associations have notes inside their bylaws that talk about areas. Some of us actually have very strict area requirements, and it's for equity, right? It's for everybody having a say in this. So that's my only concern about it, is that basically it puts 40% of the vote from our executive committee into one neighborhood association.
Mike?
Yeah, and this kind of revisits a few years ago when we were talking about the bylaws. And I'm going to pitch this idea again. I think the only voting members ought to be the neighborhood representatives. The officers shouldn't be voting representatives for exactly that reason.
Okay, any other comments? I don't get to vote, so that's not, Marie?
My only concern is that I remember seeing some concerns Carol Pardo had around minutes being changed, and I think very highly of Jan. That's not the issue. So my issue is more that she was handpicked to be the secretary. So that's my only concern.
Well, we had a nominating committee in the spring, and they searched and searched for a secretary, and nobody volunteered. Then I found somebody who came, and she decided to stay for 2 meetings, I think is what it was, and then she was gone. The nominating committee was no longer in place, I tried to bring another person who would be brand new to the Sweeney Association to be secretary. And she finally decided that she was already pre-committed in many ways and wouldn't do the organization's good work. And then at that point, it was like July, I think, and at that point, I was still looking, and Janet volunteered and Sam volunteered. So if it's hand-selected, it was only because I was going through as many different people that I knew in different organizations to try to find somebody who would do it, and I was grateful that Janet stepped up.
So point of information, the bylaws require them to put forward a person.
Yeah.
So that's, has nothing to do with your position or anything. It's required by the executive committee to put forward a person.
And we did.
I know, that's what I'm saying, so
Okay.
that's,
Oh, thank you.
I'm
I see
being,
what you're saying.
I'm being brief, but that's
Right.
the main reason why you're putting forward something.
Yes, agreed.
I think we should just be grateful that Jan volunteered. I mean, and I know we're all volunteers here, and, you know, I mean, let's, like, let it unfold, and if we have issues, then we can address those. And, you know, give her the guidelines that we want in terms of brevity or length, and, you know, and coach her, like, oh, we need to add this or not add this, but, you know, it's tough getting people. So I say let's go with it.
Thank you.
So I would second that comment, and I would also say, I hope that you're not trying to imply in any way, shape, or form that just because two people live in the same neighborhood that there's going to be collusion.
Rob?
So that's not what I'm implying. There's
Okay.
an order before the executive committee that has dire impact to Hayhurst. They may vote that is not in our best interest.
We
So,
recuse ourselves if
excuse
that's
me.
the case.
You know,
And they may
I don't
also
see that as,
not.
I don't, huh?
And they may also not.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, that's my concern, is
Uh-huh.
it puts a lot of power into people's hands. So,
Thank you
that's
for
the
voicing your
rebuttal.
concern.
All right, are we ready to vote on, okay, it's Don,
I was gonna move the previous question, let's vote.
thank you, all right. All in favor of appointing Janet as the new acting secretary, say,
If you have that, you have to vote on that's a motion.
I did not make a
He didn't
motion.
make the motion.
he just called the question.
No.
Yeah, that's a.
No,
You
I
don't
didn't,
have
I said I was going to, but I did not.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay, so where are we?
We're voting on the motion to approve the
I think
appointment.
it's-
Okay, we're voting on the motion to approve Janet as our acting secretary. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, Marie's opposed. Anybody abstaining?
I'm gonna abstain because I'm just scared to vote on this.
Mike Lindman and Charlie abstain. Okay, thank you. Okay, so now I'll talk a little bit about the president's report. Let's see how we're doing on time. Not so great. All right, I have been going on Sweeney's behalf to meetings with the city and with city commissioners. And as of this date, as you probably know, November 14th is set for a hearing on Chapter 396. Sylvia and I have been following it through different channels. I heard the other day that no one's quite sure what's going to happen on the 14th, whether public testimony is going to be taken, or whether it's just going to be a 3-hour presentation by You Daily and Civic Life. So we'll have to stay tuned on that. And as soon as I know exactly what's happening, I will let you know, because if they're taking public testimony, I would encourage all of you to send your testimony in, or if you can, go down and testify before them. Right now, I think it's leaning towards not, but I don't have a definitive answer yet. Last time we had our meeting in September, we had a letter that was to go to the city. I had comments from several people, so I rewrote the letter. It's on page 13 of your packet. I will say that in transferring it from my computer to the Sweeney computer, didn't quite make it all the way. We have all the substance of what I wrote, but down in sort of paragraph 4, it says deleting reference to neighborhoods, coalitions, and business associations. That word disenfranchised should be carried across. So when we send it to the city, we'll fix those problems. But basically,
Which paragraph is that?
it's the second paragraph under number 2.
Oh, thank you, deleting the reference.
Right.
Sorry, okay.
That will
gotcha.
all stay in
Thank
there.
you,
It just
thank you.
didn't paginate properly.
didn't know which paragraph.
But
you were in.
I would share with you part of the reason why I rewrote this is because it was shared with me that when city staff or bureau staff look at a letter that comes through the commissioner's office and that is given to them to work on, they like to see things in bullet points. They like to see exactly what it is you're asking for. They like to see it on one page, and as opposed to paragraphs. So the first letter I wrote was a whole series of paragraphs that made points, but didn't put them in as bullets. So that's what I've done here. The substance hasn't changed. I took some wordiness out and kept it very simple. So I'd like to ask you to take a quick look at it, and then I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the letter so that I can get it out to the city before the November 14th meeting. Mike?
I just have one just quick fix is that in the paragraph, the third paragraph of number 2, I don't think include should be capitalized on the first sentence. Legislative process is vital and should include opportunities.
Right, thank you.
Just a,
Very much appreciate it.
and then, sorry, my only other comment would be is if your local neighborhood hasn't sent their own letter, I would highly suggest this be the month that you talk about it and hopefully put one together, because considering that the November 14th date is coming up, I know a lot of the other neighborhoods around the city of Portland are going to be doing so as well, if they haven't already.
Thank you. Any other comments on this letter? Jackie?
Mine was, let's see, paragraph 2, second paragraph under number 2, after the last 40 years, would it be appropriate if we reiterate we are opposed to the deletion of this reference? The reference to neighborhood association, so that we clearly say that in the letter.
So where do you want that to go?
Well, let's see, second paragraph under number 2 says, and business associations disfranchises the communication vehicle, blah, 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 have developed together for the last 40 years. We are opposed to the deletion of this reference.
That should be
But
a first,
it's already-
that should be a
starts
first
the
sentence.
So
in the-
first
Starts
sentence,
to
yeah.
Deleting.
Well, it's already there. It says deleting the reference to neighborhoods, coalitions, and business
Yeah.
associations.
We're
Oh.
not stating opposition.
So I'm not, I agree it's there. I would be succinct, like you said. I would say,
Yeah.
we are opposed to deleting,
Yeah.
period. And then
Yeah.
you can go on
Then
and,
you,
So that's your offer. Okay, we
yeah,
are opposed to
yeah, I
deleting.
just wanted it to be pretty,
entire point, yeah.
All right. Any other revisions, Laura?
Yeah, under 2, it says Sweeney believes the initial process was flawed, and we bring up the issue of time, which I agree with, but that's always a weak argument. I thought our strongest argument was it was flawed because the process by which committee members were chosen. You know,
So you'd
instead of
like that
sending out.
added, that the committee, the choice of committee members was also flawed?
No, the process by which the committee members were chosen. There
Okay.
wasn't an application put out, it was by invitation, and a lot of people didn't have a chance to apply or.
I'm happy to add that. Okay, that sounds good. Any other changes? Don?
I think you missed the point too. I think you ought to have the bullet ought to start out saying, we oppose to deleting the reference to neighborhoods and so on, because I think that's the major point you're trying to make. The rest of this is interesting, but not important relatively.
That's your answer.
Just start with it. Start with the third.
So start basically putting paragraph 2 as paragraph 1, then just rotating the,
yeah, I think that was, yeah.
All right.
Those paragraphs.
And then we'll switch them out.
second
Okay.
paragraph, number 2 for the first paragraph.
All right, I'll do that. Any other changes?
Sorry.
Okay, all those in favor of sending this letter to city council as revised, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Okay. Thank you. All right, we're gonna have our Charlie talk about our treasurer's report and put a ratification of a motion from Maplewood before you.
I'm sure everybody spent copious hours reviewing the financial statements and the treasurer's comments. Does anybody have any questions about it?
Would you give a workshop someday?
I would love to. I'm happy to.
Then we don't have to do it here.
I mean, I suppose I need to coordinate that. I'll talk to Sylvia about figuring out a time to do it. But the only problem is whoever comes to the workshop may be called upon from the treasurer.
Oh, yeah.
Well, not shop to workshop now.
So,
All right.
yeah, I'm happy to, I mean, a lot of this, there's been a lot of changes that have been made in financials, the way things are done, the way things are accounted for, which, you know, for the better. Some things are more revealing, I think financials, the balance sheet is more revealing, it gives you an idea of, when there was no statement of cash flows, there's now at least a change in cash from the beginning of the year to present. So you get an idea of where that change is, and that's what I try to incorporate into my narrative is, is to say, well, yeah, we're up $31,000, why? There's gotta be an answer to that. That's sort of out of the ordinary, but that's, a lot of that has to do with, we get front-end funded from Civic Life. The first tranche of money they give us is greater than what we get later on in the year, about $20,000. So any other?
So it's an advance that has to be
Technically,
paid
it's
back.
advance.
Just to make that clear.
Or
Yeah.
not get paid back, but be applied essentially to future costs.
Reverse accrual.
Yeah, so that's what, a lot of the costs end up coming later. The biggest one is insurance. And, I mean, technically, we should be accounting for it by accruing it and creating a deferred amount associated with what will be paid. But,
We've been paying it in
people,
advance.
people get it. It's not that big of a deal.
I appreciate it. I just wanted
Raise
to-
your card.
Yes.
Mike?
I appreciate how you're trying to follow the money more quickly. I just wanted to make clear, because I think what you're saying is that we're saying we're up $31,000 is accurate only in the timing, not in the actual amount coming into the organization.
Correct.
It's just about when it's actually coming into the organization. So I just wanted to make that clear. It's not like, oh my gosh, we got a whole bunch more funding.
Correct.
It's just the fact of when that funding actually happened to hit our bank accounts.
Yeah, and that's why I do it this way, because
Yeah.
it kind of throws out this question. I mean, everybody should be looking at it and going, that's a lot of money, where'd it come from, why is it there? And then I try to answer that.
Yeah.
Any other questions on the financial report from Charlie? Okay? Okay, thank you. Then we have, Mike Lemon is here from Maplewood, and during the interim between last meeting and this meeting, we had we had a special meeting for the finance so that Maplewood could ask the exec to approve the use of their account for monies that will be used, as I understand it, for a mural at the school, okay?
What they've asked for is that we lend the 501c3 credentials, so to
Yes.
speak,
Right.
to Maplewood so that they can use that to apply for a grant
Correct.
that you couldn't do without it.
Correct. There's a group of parents kind of run through the PTA, though I don't think it's officially a PTA thing in Maplewood, to create a mural project to beautify the school. And one of the grants that the parents of Maplewood Elementary wanted to apply for is a regional arts grant. And they needed a 501c3 umbrella to just literally fill in on the documents. This is not the final application. This was just literally the first hoop that everybody had to jump through. It came to us with the fact of the timeline was very, very tight on it. And we actually had our own special emergency meeting so that we could actually pass it, considering that we haven't promised any funds. We don't know if they're actually going to get the grant, but we needed to at least jump through this hoop so that they had the opportunity to apply for said grant, which has now been done. We have applied. We don't know any response yet from the Regional Arts Council yet. There will be, and if the parent group gets through the first round, there will be the full application, which will be, I believe, in December. I'm still getting details on that. I will be the point person at Maplewood, since I am the treasurer there, for any kind of money that happens to come in, if any does from this grant. So.
Also, just for your information, this is on 23A in your materials, so if you're looking for the motion for the ratification, that's where it's written out. Michael?
So how is this similar or different from the restricted account?
I'll answer that. It will be a restricted account. So the amount being requested is not enough to cover the costs associated with what we're trying to do. It's something that clearly mission to try to help the neighborhood association accomplish and the school accomplish. If the money is made available, we would use the Sweeney vehicle to receive funds and set up an account for Maplewood specific to this project.
So are we then authorizing a restricted account with this motion, or?
No, we're not doing that
comes
yet.
later.
It's gonna come later. I mean, there
Okay.
may be some coordination, there's some things we're gonna have to look at, think about. The one thing I was most concerned about was that Sweeney wouldn't have any exposure. We're not guaranteeing anything, we're not putting any money up. We are just lending our name, and if necessary in the future, allow a vehicle to be used to receive funds, not only from the grant, but also people who want to contribute to the project.
Now, Mike, you had your card,
Yeah.
did he answer most of the
He
things you were
answered
gonna
most,
say?
there's no, the parent group didn't ask for any actual, like, contribution or money from Sweeney or from the Maplewood board. Our vote was specifically just basically lending the 501c3, so if there's literally a place, if they do get this grant, that it can be housed. And so that's,
It's passed through, so.
it's basically, yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it is. So
David?
we did not promise anything beyond, like, we would hope that we can, just help you apply for this grant and hopefully you get it.
Okay, David and then Dawn.
Yeah.
In the past, there's been a reference to an administrative fee for doing this. Are we assessing one?
So, in general, we've done fiscal fees for neighborhood association for free unless the grant allows for a fiscal fee. So if they were going after money and there was a fiscal fee, then I would assume they would write that in.
Dawn.
I have no objection to this proposal. I do suggest, however, that the board, we spend some time with the board to go through a review of what it means to be a fiscal sponsor, because it's a fairly complicated thing, and you really need to know what you're buying into when you do become that. I don't think this is the time to do that, but I think in the future, some time should be set aside to do that.
All right, Charlie, do you want to move this?
Do I want to move it?
The motion.
Let's move it. Come from the finance committee. Okay, you've seen the motion to accept the Maplewood School Mural Project for fiscal sponsorship.
Is there a second?
Yes.
George is gonna be the second. Janet, did you get that? Okay.
Doesn't need a second, for customer
All right,
finance
right.
committee.
Yeah.
All in favor of the motion to accept the Maplewood School Mural Project for fiscal sponsorship, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, okay. Couple other things. Yes, you can abstain. Marie abstains. Got that? All right. Two more things. John Gibbons sent in a report as first vice president. It's in writing, it's on page 14. I draw it to your attention. The other thing I forgot to say when I was talking as president is, there, in the spring, there was a motion to appoint a personnel committee. And Sam, would you state what were the reasons behind appointing this personnel committee at that time?
At the time, we were trying very hard to understand what Civic Life was doing and to come to an idea of what was happening in the future. It's necessary to understand that and to try and figure out what was going to happen and how we could be reacting to it in a timely manner. We were also worried, the executive board back at that time, as to if we were going to have to lay off people. And as such, how would we go about that? And the other reason that came up was in the case of injury or sickness that meant more than 3 to 4 days, we had to know how it was going to affect the office and come up with a policy or procedure for that. At the present time, since that motion was made, there's been a whole lot of effort on the code revisions, how it's been changing on a weekly and daily basis, and also what's been going on here with Sweeney. So
So I think what Sam's trying to say is that the executive committee didn't appoint appoint anybody to the Personnel Committee because we had the code revision this summer, we had House Bill 2001. The code revision affects how much money we get or how we get our contract renewed. So we held off on calling a Personnel Committee until we were sure, or much more sure, about what the amount of money that we get or wouldn't get would be. So I think that it's more likely that we'll do this in January when we're closer to the budgeting process, and then we can get a group of people from this board to sit down and talk about what the impact might be on personnel, on keeping the doors open, on the paying the cost of just running the office, that kind of thing. But it's premature to do it right now. And we've been fortunate that we haven't had anybody with serious health problems in the last, say, 10 months. And so that necessity hasn't occurred yet, and that's why we haven't called the Personnel Committee. Okay, Sylvia? Okay, my report is in writing, and since we're behind time, I'm just gonna highlight the fall cleanup is on Saturday, November 2nd. We have lots of events, if you'll note there. So, we're doing great on volunteers, but if you have a couple hours to give on Saturday, November 2nd, wanna help out, Sarah would love to hear from you. We do get tremendous volunteer support for this event, so usually around 75 volunteers, so. And
thank
it's
you.
fun.
Thank you all.
Believe it or not.
And then also I want to point out, the Neighborhood Small Grant workshops are gonna start up. And so the first one will be on Wednesday, November 13th at 6:30 in the building, I think we have room 8. And John Tapero is heading that program up. And then also we'll have another one on December 13th. Is that right? December 3rd, yeah. So, and the information is up on our website. It's also gonna be in the November newspaper. And if you need any one-on-one help with writing grants or reviewing those, John is also the staff person to assist. So if you can't make those workshop dates, just call us and we'll work it through. The rest, I'll leave for others.
All right. We're gonna move into our committee reports. I'd ask each of the chairs to make maybe a 2-minute report, the most important things you want to share with people, because we have other unfinished business and new business to consider this evening, and I want to try to do that if we can. So we're gonna start with Murphy.
Oh, all right, so Watershed Committee, we have had, we had a nice presentation from, caught me off guard. I'll skip that because it happened. So all I want to say is we support the Stars workshop, which is in Sylvia's notes, and so I need not say further. Next.
Mary Pat?
Yeah, schools committee, one of the things people should be aware of is that what is referred to as the media center building up at Smith Elementary, permits have already been established in the city of Portland, and they will be demolishing that part of the Smith Elementary building here in the next few months, probably by January. We have had a number of meetings, schools committee, as well as Ash Creek, with representatives from Portland Public Schools. They'll also be coming to the Sweeney Schools Committee meeting in November. Lots of discussion about what could happen. There's quite a large report that was put out about Smith School and taking a look at it. Some consultants looked at it. One of the main things that's going to happen going into the future is whether or not something to do with Smith School will be put into the bond measure that could come out for the 2020 election next November. But it's all, so much of it, because if certain things happen for Smith School, it could be one price. If other things happen, like completely dozing it and redoing it, it could be $50 to $60 million to do that, and how does that fit into a bond measure either soon or into the future? But the one thing that's really important is there are a lot more young families in that particular area where Smith is, and so these young families are coming to schools meetings and they're coming forward to say something has to happen, because the schools, if you don't know this, the schools are crowded at Maplewood. They put up temporary facilities, and also Markham is crowded, Stevenson's crowded, Capitol Hill's crowded. I mean, they're all crowded, and so having another elementary school could be really, really helpful. The people from facilities do realize that at Smith we need to get some lights back on. There are young people doing things, everything from climbing over fences and certain things that, because it's actually a kind of a little park for people as well as what was the school. There is activity there. There are people that go there every day to either walk, run with kids, run with dogs, whatever. And so it's a lot of this came to us. I know that Michael, for example, and other people, we've been following it for a long time, but it's only been recently that facilities at PPS has actually started to talk more about what could happen. So that's the top of the list on the October update. Major issues at Robert Gray with racial and equity issues have been elevated. There is response from parents. Safety is a key concern. I would say the easy way to describe it is that there's parent-teacher association staff, parents, people are working in different kinds of groups. There's the Robert Gray website has information about specific curriculum and what the teachers are going to be doing. Watch for more information on the Robert Gray issue. I think that you'll see things coming up either later this year with meetings that the PTA is going to have or into January 2020. I have attended a couple of meetings about the Student Success Act. Again, Portland Public Schools and looking for $39 million from the money that was appropriated by the state and how that gets put into different areas that they're looking at. Mostly what I've been asked to do is just make sure that when I go to these meetings that Southwest gets represented, because all of the meetings, none of them are being held in Southwest, they're all being held on the east side. I was out at Lent Elementary, which is way off at 205, up at Roosevelt last night. One meeting was out at Fabian, and then I think the next meeting, I can't even remember what school the last meeting is, but they also have a website to talk about the student success and what you would like to see. This is getting interwoven also into a Portland Public Schools reimagining project, which is really a way of saying a visioning process. So there's lots of things going on because it's been years since this kind of money has been available, and how it gets appropriated is going to be really important. Also, what happens with items that go on the bond measure impacts us because of Wilson High School potentially could be on the 2020 bond measure as well. In the community, I just want to mention that I went to a multi-city equity summit last week that was held down at Lake Oswego High School. A lot of the suburban towns were involved. There were law enforcement, schools, Portland State was represented well. Video was taken. If we can get it, it would be a wonderful thing, even if it's just the keynote speaker and how information was revealed from the Dean of Education at Portland State. That could be handy for this organization, whether you watch it at home and we come and talk about it, or whether we watch it as a group. Our next regular meeting is November 21st, and we will have Andrew Scott, who is the Portland Public Schools school board rep from this area. And also then a couple of the people from Portland Public Schools that have to do with what's going on with capital investment for facilities and facilities management.
I gave Mary Pat a few more minutes because she got cut off and didn't get to say anything at the last meeting. So, and there's a lot to catch up on. Her committee meets every 2 months. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Marie, you were first. You got a
I
minute
just
to add to that.
wanted to thank Mary Pat for going to the meeting. I was also there, and I do want to be very explicit of what some of the concerns were. These are all hearsay. They weren't totally confirmed at the meeting, but a white student threatened either his brothers were coming to the school to kill students of color, or he did. There's some question about what was said. It was very tense at the meeting. Parents were very, very concerned about their safety because a lockdown was not called for. And they explained that the police didn't call for that. I do want to share also that Robert Gray wants to bring the same program that Wilson is bringing, No Place for Hate, from the Anti-Defamation League, and also to bring training, since not only did they call the meeting for this one incident, but there were many incidences last year that were also not addressed, similar to what happened at Wilson. So for example, one young student, I think he was in 8th grade, Mary Pat, described when he was in 6th grade, a white student, and this was a student of color speaking, a white student came up to him and pretended that he was selling him into slavery as a game. So it was an extremely tense meeting, and I encourage this body to do, again, everything we can to support our Robert Gray students who are grappling with these issues, in addition to, of course, Wilson students as well.
Thank you very much, Don.
Well, excellent report. In addition to that, there's a 100,000-foot vision level activity going on, a committee of 40 people looking at changes for Wilson High School, potentially looking at the bond measure. There's going to be 2 more meetings at a very fast pace, very well managed, but it's looking at the vision of what people would like to see in terms of the building and the way the whole thing is put together.
Thank you, Don.
Next meeting is next Tuesday, a week from Tuesday, and there'll be 2 weeks after that.
All right, I think we'll move on to transportation. There are 2 motions. They, I believe, are in your packet. We'll start on page. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Steve. Go ahead. Let's do parks first.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, there's city has put together a council work session in response to the long-term problems with parks funding. That work session is scheduled for November 19th, 9:30 to 11 a.m. According to Jennifer Yoakum, who's their Parks Community Relations Manager. Partners are invited to attend or to either in person or online, and there's an address. You can see it in the Parks Report in the November newsletter. But there will not be public testimony at this time. The work session is about sharing, she says, our technical research and getting guidance from council on what they want parks to pursue with regard to the size and depth of the future system, as well as alternate funding options. Because the information on scenarios and funding mechanisms is complex and interdependent, we are asking, what they're asking us to do is that we hear the information that they're sharing on the 19th and the council's responses so that we're able to respond to it from our perspective, and ask more questions, and give them guidance. And there will be, after this work session, additional opportunities for broader public input as well as market research.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anything else on parks? Okay. All right, David. David has 2 motions from the Transportation Committee. They're on pages 24 and probably 25.
First motion on page 24, I'm not going to read it verbatim, but I'll describe it. It is addressing the construction that's occurring right now on 45th. Transportation Committee is asking that they take a more holistic view of the whole corridor from Cameron all the way to Taylor's Ferry. This is in recognition there was a pedestrian fatality 6 months ago, and also the upcoming construction on Capitol Highway. The main things we're requesting are lower speeds, crosswalks at intersections and trail crossings, and pragmatic mitigations. Any questions?
It's from the committee, so we don't need a second. Go ahead.
Did they do a traffic study on the impacts? The way we got the PBOT to do something about the BES Arnold Creek Culvert Project, they had named Stevenson as the named detour route, and then they gave us the impact study when we asked for it, and it called for how many cars would be trafficking.
I'm not aware of one. You're talking for the Capitol Highway?
Yeah.
I can find out. It's a great question. I'm
Yeah.
not aware of those.
It would be useful.
Yep.
We didn't get what we wanted, but we got something.
Yeah, no, thank you for the advice.
Other questions on this motion or discussion? Mike?
Just a quick one. What are pragmatic mitigations?
We try not to define the solutions. One of the suggestions would be like trail crossing signs, but we don't want to dictate the solutions.
Okay.
I'm here to tell you that
Katie?
solution was speed bumps.
Quick insight there. Any other discussion on this motion? All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? No abstentions? Okay, good. All right, the motion passes. Thank you. David, do you want to go on to the next one?
I would actually defer to Don, who could better speak to it for myself.
Basically, this is, the Red Electric Trail has been funded in 2010 for a bridge in west end of Hillsdale. It's been designed, it went up for bid last year, and they did not succeed, and it's in limbo since, and this is just basically letter to Peabody and Udaley and Fish, and both of them because it's theoretically a parks project, but it's being managed by Peabody for a reason I won't get into. Basically, this is just asking them to tell us what's happening, and that's the extent of it. Very brief.
Okay, discussion? Sylvia?
Is there a time, like, when do you want this letter to go out?
Tomorrow?
Let's-
When it's reasonable, whatever.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Let's go on to public safety. Ms. Silverman.
We have secured a date for the Emergency Preparedness Fair. It will be March 8th, 2020, from noon to 4. It will be here in the auditorium, and the Public Safety Committee is encouraging your neighborhood nets to participate.
Sounds good. And you have something else happening this week.
We do. It's listed in the announcements, and it's tomorrow night. It's the Officer Appreciation Event, and we're hoping everybody turns out for free dinner and lots of door prizes and to appreciate our officers.
Great. Any questions or discussion on what Kim said? Sylvia?
I just want to say, this Public Safety Committee has gone all out for this event tomorrow night. There are computers and car change gift certificates, there's safety vests, there's lighting for bicycle stuff. I mean, there's all kinds of door prizes that they've really worked on. They've raised money to do the food and to bring clothing, warm clothing for the Sunshine Division. There's a historic display from the Police Museum. So I really have to applaud. They've raised a lot of money, Charlie, to pay for this event.
We did. All right, any other comments or discussion? All right, let's move on to land use. Gary?
Okay, I got my notes in ahead of time, just under the gun, not a whole week yet, but residential infill project has air cover from House Bill 2001 and Senate Bill 534. Basically though, RIP for short, has to step back and look at displacement. And so now we've got several new acronyms that I introduced here in my meeting notes. And so basically, key elements of the Housing Opportunity Initiative are what's going to happen, what the benefits of RIP and the benefits of better housing by design. So I just want to make it perfectly clear that the Better Housing by Design, we had Bill Cunningham come to our August meeting, explained everything, went through it, and we are not taking exception to the project in that side of this whole overarching project. I just want to make that clear. Sometimes people at board level will say, well, why didn't you do something beyond this? All right, on the RIP side, we're having Tracy Morgan come in November and start talking about what level of definition can they now put into RIP, because they have to true it up with all of the aspects of SB 534 and House Bill 2001. This basically is reflective of, you'll see my write-up for the land use for the month of November. So I'll just let you know that Morgan or Tracy Morgan Tracy, I keep calling her.
It's alphabetical,
Yeah.
and before T.
Yes. All right. He's saying that, look, things are likely due to slide, but there's a strong chance. So my bottom line here is my last point. As a precautionary approach, I just want to let you guys know we probably could be bringing in no later than January to the BB some type of motion coming away with what we see is the final RIP that they're going to take to City Council. So.
Okay. And everybody remembers what the RIP is, Residential Infill Project? Okay. All right, Michael?
So do you think the changes required by House Bill 2001 and Senate Bill 534 will be included in the spring timeframe for RIP, or?
Yeah, Morgan is very confident that they understand what is going to be the final details of those two legislative bills. He believes that they're confident that they already know how to true up, and so he thinks it might just take a little more time, but they're confident. And that's kind of the message that he's going to deliver to us in the November meeting. But our committee has 101 questions waiting for him November 19th.
That's a few.
Thank you. Any other questions for Gary? Oh, sorry, Laura, yeah.
Oh, I was just wondering, Gary, on September 17th, the Planning Commission passed this report. Is your committee going to respond on that? The historical context of racist planning?
What?
I think John Gibbons was going to give you a copy.
Yeah, that was already circulated to our land use.
Yeah, and they passed it on September 17th, but are we going to comment on it? Or do you plan to?
No.
All right, any other questions? Jackie?
Laura, could you just briefly explain who passed it and?
Oh, the
it
Bureau
passed
of
by
Planning and
council?
Sustainability on September 17th.
Commission.
Oh, the
Oh, the
commission.
commission, okay, that's what
Okay,
I
sorry.
didn't understand, okay.
You see it.
And is this affect our code, or what? This is the first many of us have heard.
No, I brought it up, oh gosh, at the last board meeting.
Why don't you actually use the language, what it says, so that people know what we're talking about? What's the name of the report?
She did, historic context of racist planning.
Historical.
Yeah, I've read it in
Yeah.
complete detail
Okay,
Okay.
all right, okay. Thank you.
several times. And I've elected not to bring it into land use at this time yet, okay?
Okay.
It's just a perspective. It's not saying, here, go do these things.
Steve?
Quick question though, for those of us who are interested in having that background, is it easily available online?
Yeah, they even had videotaped the meeting
It's on
that they had. And I gave all that information to John Gibbons, and he was gonna give it, I think, to Gary. Is that something, Gary, can you make it available to people who want it, or?
Is it on Planning and Sustainability's website, do you think?
Could we just put it out in the minutes?
That's what I would suggest, yeah.
Yeah.
Include it in
Yeah,
the
I'll need
minutes.
some technical help on it.
All
So
right.
can you help me with that?
Give it
Yeah.
to Sylvia.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got it.
It's on their
Okay,
webpage.
we'll make sure that we have a link on the website so you can find it, and that it's clearly labeled as to what it is. You can look at it at your leisure when you have some time. It's a very interesting report. I'm up to page 13, but there's a lot more than that, and I haven't got all the way through
Yeah,
it yet.
we're specifically mentioned in there. On
That's good.
page,
All right.
So-
With that, I'm going to ask Laura to speak about equity and inclusion.
Okay, first of all, the Portland United Against Hate is gonna have a meeting on Friday over in North Portland, so if anybody is available to give me a ride, the meeting is 9:30 a.m. to noon in the historic Kenton Firehouse, 8105 North Brandon Avenue. There's an interesting training on racism, historical trauma, and healing by Brandon Lee. So if you want to speak to me after the meeting, anybody who's available to give me a ride.
Excuse me, Laura, could you please repeat when?
The
didn't
date,
catch
we
it.
couldn't hear it.
Oh, Friday, October 25th, this Friday, from
Thank you.
9:30 a.m. till noon.
At the Canton Firehouse, right? Okay.
And I just want to put a meeting reminder that our equity meeting is this Monday, October 28th at 7 p.m.
Thank you.
Third, just to reiterate, we're sponsoring a Oregon Humanities with my friend Ritty. She's real excellent. She has a master's in anthropology from PSU, exploring power and privilege with courage, creativity, and compassion. So that's Monday, December 2nd, 7 p.m. here.
Charlie, you've got a question.
Well, I just want to say that I don't know if all neighborhood associations have a representative attending the Equity and Inclusion Committee. And I think that given where we are today, every neighborhood association should have somebody.
appreciate that.
Anything else, Laura?
That's it.
Okay, any further questions or discussion? Excuse me, Becky.
Yeah. I was just reading one of the pamphlets in the office earlier tonight, and I told myself, it's about time. They're 20 to 30 years behind on the hate crime here, not just in Oregon, throughout the country. Every time I turn on to see cops, and now I'm watching live PD where there's a lot of crime hate going on, I wish we could just put a big blanket over or get the ones that are doing the hate crime down to the south and let the south take care of them. Seriously. Because I've been ridiculed my life. I've been called a nigger lover by white girls in a Catholic school when I was talking to a black girl. And I got into it with the girl, and the principal says, I'll take care of them. I mean, I've been really being friends with different color. I've got color in my complex, not just black, Russian, Oriental, and every time I talk to them, they'll say, look at me and say, why are you talking to them? I mean, hate crime, I hate. I hate anything to do with people that are small-minded. And this is 30 years too late coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. All right, let's see. We're gonna go on to unfinished business, and I'm gonna talk briefly about the facilitation that occurred on Saturday. If you look at page 11 and 12 of your materials, you turn to that. Those are the minutes we approved, but it's also a description of the subjects that we covered and that the facilitator asked us to consider, and those subjects were divided at the beginning of the facilitation into, I think, 6 categories. One was meeting management and participation, and then we got ideas from the participants to go under meeting management and participation. We had a second category, which is if you're speaking for a board or committee, some of the things that all of us should consider if you're doing that. Number 3, if there are individual disagreements, how people should handle those, and people offered ideas on that. We had handling of minutes, and we had understanding the racial equity lens, communication as a form of leadership, and then in the 6th category, which was to be, it was sort of an umbrella category, how to address big contentious issues, and someone suggested that they be stated, assessed, and resolved. Once those categories were covered and people offered their comments about what should go under those categories, then we broke up into groups, and out of those groups came a list of ideas that everybody agreed to, both how it was said or written and the idea behind it. So I want to go through those with you because I thought it was an excellent meeting, and people participated fully. We had almost everybody there, almost everybody participated, and these are the ideas that came out that we can take to use on our board. The first one is to determine how equity and inclusion.
So point of information, I don't think everybody was there.
I said almost everybody.
There's a lot of excuses, so
Well,
let the minutes reflect.
I think we had a majority of the board
Point of
there.
information, I don't have to.
Okay. So let's go on to agreement on ideas. Determine how equity and inclusion fits into Sweeney values. 2, get agendas out early, at least a week in advance, and make it accessible electronically, which was a suggestion that came from our person who's blind, that was a part of that group, except for good cause. So we want to work on the 6 days or 7 days in advance. I believe our bylaws say 6 days for most meetings, but the group said they'd like to see at least a week in advance unless there is for cause. Yes?
With consequences if you don't allow some exceptions. So that's what we added.
Right, yeah, okay, all right, with consequences if you don't allow for some exceptions. Number 3, when speaking, clarify whom you're actually speaking for. Are you speaking for yourself individually? Every time I go down to city council, I have to decide, am I wearing the Sweeney hat? Do I have approval from Sweeney to be talking on these issues? And if I do, what do I say? Or am I there as an individual, or am I there as a part of another committee that's interested in this particular issue? So people are asking us to clarify who you're speaking for, yourself, your neighborhood, or the organization, or some other group. Balance specific committee information with general knowledge, and put the issue in writing if it's complex. In other words, committees will come out with what they would like to have the board address, and they can provide specific information to us. But if the issues coming from the committee is complex, people would like to see it in writing, because we all learn different ways. Sometimes you pick it up by writing, sometimes you pick it up auditorially, what you hear, and there are other ways that people learn. So, but at least we get it in writing as well as verbally expressed. Number 7, when one person exceeds their time on the agenda, the chair acknowledges the issue and then tables it to a later time for further discussion. It's a rule that we can use if a subject becomes too big or unwieldy or is using up more time than we've got in a meeting. The chair has the authority to table it and then move it on to the next meeting or next special meeting, whatever it takes, so that that motion can be heard or that issue can be heard. Resolve differences using the bylaws. We do have differences, as we all know, and we're bound not only by our Sweeney bylaws, but still at this time the ONI code is in effect. I don't even know whether they've changed the name to say Civic Life Code, but it's the same thing. And I have to tell you, I use it all the time. Both what ONI says about how to handle yourself, and then what Sweeney says. And then each of us in our neighborhoods have our own bylaws that we're supposed to be following that are sort of within the umbrella of those two groups of ideas. Neighborhood associations are to make every effort to send representatives to committee meetings. It's an ask, a wish, and work that we probably have to do because, as you know, Civic Life would like to see us have more people involved in the neighborhoods, a much broader group of people, and they're asking us to really figure out how to add more people. So this isn't Civic Life's point of view, but but those of us who work so hard will have not have to go to quite so many meetings, but more importantly, we'll have more voices at the table for discussing issues. Meet organizational imperatives, meaning what we as a board decide to do with our action plan, and then make sure that we follow through on our action plan. Be judicious in whom emails are addressed or mailed to. Well, if you're writing emails, make sure you're sending the emails to the right group, and think about whether you say reply to all or forward to everyone, because it causes this blizzard of emails, and everybody was very sensitive to that on Saturday. Getting a blizzard of emails, they're unable to keep up, and it's really distracting and actually, in some cases, annoying. Give positive, constructive feedback, including how the feedback is given. So if you're talking with somebody else and you're trying to give them feedback, make sure it's positive, and make sure, if you can, that the tone in which you give the feedback is a positive tone. Redress problems and respect people. This is sort of self-explanatory, because if you have a difference of opinion with somebody and it creates a problem, you need to try to resolve that in a respectful way. Speak and listen courteously. I'm guilty of something that maybe some of you are, which is I will listen to the first 2 sentences of what somebody's going to say, make a supposition about what the rest will be said, and I don't really listen all the way through. And the group really did talk about listening to somebody completely all the way through and letting them finish before you start forming your own ideas about how you want to respond to that. Help assimilate newcomers by being welcoming. I've been trying to do that in the last 6 months of our meetings by making sure that all of our guests get to identify themselves if they want to, and trying to make people feel welcome in our meetings. And I know all of you do too. Develop a Dropbox, and correct me if I'm wrong, Katie.
For each committee's output/input.
Right,
So
because
you
I
can
had,
look at it.
in my notes, develop a Dropbox for each committee's emails where they should be deposited rather than sent to the entire board. And I think there were 2 ideas. There's your idea, and I think other people were saying, let's send emails to the people that it should be sent to, as opposed to copying everybody, every board member, on whatever we had to say.
Yeah, that was kind of taken in number 11. You're right, that did come up.
It did.
And then remember we talked about judicious as opposed to other words.
These are the words everybody chose to go on the blackboard. After minutes are drafted, as many people as possible should review and send comments to the maker. The goal of this was the minutes belong to all of you. They don't belong to the executive committee, or they don't belong to a particular committee. They belong to all of you. So the more eyes or people, as Beth wanted said, that look at the minutes and make sure they reflect what you experienced, the better it is. And then when we come to a board meeting, we vote on those minutes. And they should then reflect what the body thinks actually happened in those meetings. Prepare an info sheet on how to get matters on the agenda or before the executive or finance committees. There are people that come in that are new all the time and don't know how Sweeney works, or they've been with Sweeney for a year and they don't know how Sweeney works. So what we thought we'd do is try to develop a half sheet that shows sort of the timing, how to get information if you want to be on Sweeney's agenda, or you want to bring something before the finance committee or the executive committee, try to give you a way of knowing when and how to do that. So that was the last thing that we added to the list. Just a number of quick comments. Anybody want to comment about what you thought about that facilitation, David?
Well, I'm not commenting on the facilitation, but I mean, these are general ideas. We don't have, like, item 17. Am I supposed to do something with that? The Dropbox?
Yes. You aren't, but I think Sylvia and I are going to work on seeing if we can't create a Dropbox for each committee, and then committees' materials, minutes, emails that go back and forth can go into that Dropbox. If you want to see what's happening in equity, you can look in the equity Dropbox.
Is that going to replace some of the current?
Yeah, so
tools?
I think this one needs a little bit more discussion because each committee already has a Google group, and Sharon can speak to this better than I can. But the way it's been set up is that committee members place documents in there, review them, get emails. But outside committee members aren't really in that mix. So if you're thinking of another box, I'm not sure how that would work. Right now, the way that it works, that was set up, I believe, is that you each have neighborhood representative. So if you want something on the agenda of a committee, you'd go to your representative and say, can you add this on? They would take it through that Google group and get it on the agenda or discuss an item. So that's the way it's set up right now. But it is just like with this board group, and you go to the meeting materials, all of you have access to it. But for the committees, it is the members of those committees that have access.
Okay.
Katie, do you
So
think
it's
that
a work
would
in
work?
progress. It was an idea. It's a very
Well,
good idea.
you know, what it would assist all of us as leaders of our respective neighborhood associations is when you can't find enough people to fill all the slots to go to the schools committee or to go to the equity committee, you can at least keep yourself apprised as an officer by looking at it. But if you're not a committee member, you can't do that.
So we had that each neighborhood, if you didn't have a representative, the chair of the neighborhood was added. Is that still the case, Sharon?
We could go through the groups.
Okay, so maybe we need to do that. Maybe that's a way to,
I love more emails.
I know.
Don,
Designate.
wait, excuse me, Don.
13, redress problems. I don't understand what that means. And I got another point after that.
It was a common agreement that if there are problems, they should be redressed, and that in that process, people should be respected. That's what it means. That's what I believe it
Well,
means.
what does redress mean?
It means you address it and you fix it.
Bring it up.
Well, you bring it up, or Keith, you want
Remedy.
to talk to it?
Remedy or set it right.
Remedy it.
Yeah, it's
That was the
address and resolves.
Right.
And then the second one, one of the things that I would really like to see in the Dropbox or whatever gets put together is copies of all the correspondence that are relative to that committee. For example, the motions we have tonight, so that we can go back and say, this is what was said, because I don't want to carry all this stuff around, but I do occasionally want to talk to the city about something that was said, so we can refer to it, and it's easy to do this.
What we'll do is we'll work on it.
Good,
And
that's
as-
fine, that's
yeah,
all I'm asking.
No, that's a great idea, yeah.
So just,
All right.
just quickly,
Janet.
redress means to remedy or set right.
Excuse me, Rob,
Thank
I
you.
didn't call on you.
You're welcome.
Just wait, please. Laura.
Oh, yeah, I had a question on number
Right.
3. When speaking, clarify whom you are actually speaking for, yourself, your neighborhood, or the organization or other. So as a standing committee chair, if someone wants to put something on the agenda, can it just represent their own personal view, or should they be representing their neighborhood?
If you, what hat are you wearing, a chair hat or just a neighborhood hat?
No, I mean, if someone comes to me as a neighborhood rep and says they wanna put something on the agenda, can they just represent their own personal opinion, or should they be representing their neighborhood?
Well, in most cases, I'd think you'd represent your neighborhood, but if it was an issue that maybe hadn't come up in the neighborhood or wasn't of concern yet, but it was a concern to that person, they could say, this is my issue. I'd like to put it on
So
the
then
agenda.
would the committee chair say, we'll take it back to your neighborhood to see if the neighborhood would like
I think it would depend
that?
on the issue.
What?
I think it would depend on the issue, whether you sent the person back to their neighborhood or you thought, well, this is a timely issue, we could all talk about it in equity and inclusion, and then they can take it back to their neighborhood. It just depends on the circumstances.
Well, I don't know, that doesn't give really good guidance.
I'll help you later. All right, let's see. Jackie, I missed you. Did you want to say something?
Well, I was responding to Sharon.
Miss Sharon.
Comments about the Dropbox, and because I wanted to ask Sharon a question about if we had that for representing the committee, the various committees that we don't have a representative for, could, like Katie was suggesting, it goes to the chairs, but Sharon could, the chair could give access to maybe somebody else on their board, right? You would be able to give access to whoever the chair felt was a good representative.
Right, you
Wouldn't
can
have
give
to be-
access to the Google Groups to whoever you want. You just have to decide who's that
So,
gonna be.
yeah, so, it wouldn't have to be you, Katie.
Let's talk about this some more and see what we can do.
I want to
before
make
the
sure
next-
that everybody's concerns about privacy are addressed, because we have a duty of privacy. So the idea of putting a whole lot of emails in there, I don't know what you think about it, but I think that's something that needs to be considered as well.
Good point. All right. Now, that's what we came up with as a joint group for all the people that were there. And everybody agreed to what this list and sort of the characterization and the words that we used on that list. So I'd like to move on the agenda because we're running behind and go to a motion from Steve Molyneux.
Thank you. I'm wearing the Steve Molyneux hat, speaking for myself, not for a neighborhood or for a committee. My motion is that the Sweeney Board and its executive committee support equity and inclusion as integral to our purposes. In Article 2 of our bylaws, particularly it states in Section 1, to encourage, support, and coordinate civic participation in matters affecting the livability of Southwest Portland by providing educational resources and maintaining communication between
Page
individuals.
27.
Huh?
Page 27.
Oh, it's page 27 in your packet,
Yeah.
excuse me.
The last
Okay.
page.
The very last page.
Sorry, Steve.
Maintaining communication between individuals, neighborhood associations, public agencies, business organizations, private and other organizations. Next, Section 5, I've just excerpted 2 of the purposes expressed in the bylaws. To reflect the full diversity of all people found within its boundaries, including, but not limited to, communities of color, immigrant and refugee populations, renters, and individuals of all income levels. The bylaws also state that individuals and groups are concerned to reconcile differences, whether inside or outside the scope of grievance procedures through one-on-one dialogue or mediation. So I think for the board to move forward on its business in support of these and the other purposes of the organization, I move that the board direct Marie Tybal of Hillsdale Neighborhood Association and Shannon Hiller-Webb of South Burlingame Neighborhood Association to resolve their issues and/or concerns about leadership through mediation or to use the grievance procedure. And there's been quite a lot in this, so that's the end of the motion. That's the full motion. There's been quite a lot of discussion about perhaps how we aren't following the bylaws or, that kind of thing. So the bylaws do call
Point of order, we need a second before we can begin discussion.
I'll second.
He's finishing his motion, he hasn't finished
No,
talking
he
about
did
the
finish his
yet.
motion.
He did finish his motion.
I finished reading the motion.
Now he's discussing.
All right, do we have a second on
I'll
this
second.
motion?
David did.
Okay, David seconded the motion.
Sorry, didn't-
All right, now we can have
It's all right.
discussion.
I want to make sure we follow procedures correctly.
Right.
So there's been a fair bit of discussion about how we might not be in compliance with the bylaws. So when we have differences, the bylaws do provide means of resolving those differences. And they are through one-on-one dialogue or mediation and grievance procedures. That's how they're resolved. So that's the purpose of my motion, to make sure that we are able to keep ourselves in forward motion on the full set of business that we have to deal with. And that's why I think we should ask Marie and Shannon to resolve their differences and or concerns through mediation or to use the grievance procedure.
Rob?
Since one of the parties is not here, that this is specifically addressing, I move that we table the motion until the point she can be here and rebut whatever information she would like. I think that's fair and respectful.
Is there a second for the table or not?
Second.
Okay, there's a second for the table.
Who's second?
It's Katie. Okay, so we have a motion to table. I would comment that the motion that Steve's put forward has nothing to do with talking about the issues. It has to do with how the board can move forward to resolve these issues. And even if Shannon Hill or Webb were here, we could
Point of
still
order.
vote on that.
You're not supposed to be debating this at this point.
I'm not debating it, I'm commenting on
I
it.
know, you're not supposed to.
Yeah, I
Fine.
believe Robert's Rules of Order requires that once a motion to table, it needs to be
So
voted on.
okay, so we'll call for the motion. All in favor of tabling Steve's motion, raise your hands. We've got Marie, Rob, and Katie. Okay. All opposed to tabling the motion, raise your hands. Okay, anybody abstaining? Okay, we have Mike, and we have Michael.
And Murphy.
And Murphy is abstaining. Thank you. You're right over my shoulder.
I know.
All right, so we'll continue the discussion on the motion before the table. Are other people would like to comment on this motion? Laura?
Yeah, well, this brings me back to that question I had for number 3. So, if you're a committee chair and someone wants to put something on the agenda, but it's clearly of a personal dispute, and they haven't brought it before their neighborhood to get approved that personal dispute should be on the agenda for that standing committee, then as the standing committee, should you refer them to mediation and grievance? Or should you,
I'm going to thank you for your comment, but I don't think it's necessarily germane to what we're considering, which is the motion itself. We can give you direction about what happens when somebody has a dispute, but I would want to look at the bylaws and the rules.
but that's part of his motion, is that they should be referred to the mediation.
That's right, and that's what our bylaws say. If there is a dispute between people and it can't be resolved on a one-on-one basis, they have the choice to go through mediation, or they have a choice to use the grievance process. And there are also other civil
So
remedies that you can do.
But I'm just saying, at what point are they told you should go to mediation and grievance? Or
Use your judgment.
Charlie?
I'm trying to get direction.
Okay, all right. When you know that there is a real grievance because of the kind of conversations that are going on or emails that are going on, and you can see the parties aren't resolving it, it seems to me that is the right time for a chair to say to them, this looks like a personal grievance. You need to either go through the mediation process or sit down with each other or go through the grievance process. That's really the answer. Michael?
Yes, the chair or the executive committee sets the agenda, and if somebody wants to add to it, they have the option of bringing that up at the meeting, and the group can vote on whether or not that item is added to the agenda.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. All right, Charlie, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I've been quiet about this, and my wife tells me to breathe, to keep my blood pressure down. Breathe heavily, and I'm about to do it right now. I'm tired of these accusations being made without a basis or support. It says the entire executive group is, and I honestly don't know what I've done to be accused of this. I don't know what anybody else on the executive committee has done to be accused of, again, being toxic, which I don't understand. Specifically, what's the toxic? I don't know. And we're here to try to resolve things, get things done, accomplish things, move forward. Can we do that? That's all I want to do. I think this motion addresses that. I think it's the only way to get this thing resolved and for us to put it behind us and move forward.
Thank you. George?
I just want to say, I'm fairly new on the board, so I'm just wondering, why is section 1 and section 5 are taken from where? Is that just new writing, or?
No, those are from they are, pardon me for interrupting, but they are from, their direct quotes from the bylaws under the Article 2, which states the purposes of the organization.
And that's specified just above that
Yeah.
motion.
I was just wondering why particularly on 5 there's not a mention of gender or gender identity, with all these other things that are.
I think the answer to that is this is as far as our bylaws have evolved. We probably need to look at them again and continue to broaden the definition. We just haven't gotten there yet, George.
Even gender?
It says but not limited to.
It says but not limited to.
It's a new issue.
With that, yeah. No, you have a good point. You have a very good point.
I was just wondering.
Nancy?
So how about if, as a third option to mediation or the grievance procedure, could you add in the Article 11, Section 1, individuals could reconcile their differences through one-on-one dialogue?
Yes.
Yes?
Well, Are you asking to amend the motion?
I could if that.
Okay,
sounds
I'm
reasonable.
taking that as a friendly
Friendly
amendment.
amendment.
Let's see how it might work, okay? I move that the board direct Marie and Shannon to resolve their issues and/or concerns about leadership through, and then I only list mediation, or grievance. I would be happy to add
Or more informally, it would be.
one-on-one
dialogue.
I mean, I understand your point, and I think it's correct, but I mean, it may take more than one-on-one.
Person to person.
Yeah.
Pardon?
Person to person.
How about face-to-face?
Face-to-face, I think.
Face-to-face instead of one-on-one? Okay.
Well, point of order, once a motion has been made and seconded, it belongs to the organization, it no longer belongs to the mover, so a
Okay.
change would require an amendment.
All right.
Right.
Well,
Is that the case?
Michael, in
Who's
answer
our
to that, you're
parliamentarian?
correct, but when we vote on the final motion, it will include all of this. So it won't be separated. He's accepting this as a friendly amendment, but when it's read out.
And I'm saying that's a violation of Robert's Rules of Order. Once a motion has been made and seconded, it
Right.
belongs to the floor.
Right.
And for any changes to be made, it does need to have an amendment.
So she'd need to make an amendment.
So she moved to make an
Needs to make an
amendment to it.
So let's gather them all up at once
I'll
and
move
then.
to make that amendment.
Okay,
I
there's
second
one
it.
suggested amendment.
I second your friendly amendment.
Okay.
The just so you know how I'm recording that friendly amendment, it's now would read through face-to-face dialogue, comma, mediation, or to use the grievance procedure.
What information, is a grievance even viable anymore for this?
It depends,
past
I
45
would like to
days.
answer that, which is, it depends on when any of the parties perceived that they had a grievance. So, for instance, if your grievance occurred in July, the time period's passed, but if your grievance as of when Marie claimed that the executive committee was negligent in their affairs at the last board meeting, we still have enough time for her to file a grievance. There's a 45-day period after that. So it depends upon what they decide is a grievance, whether they can use the grievance process or not, and when it happened. And it's within their hands. All right, Kim.
With respect to the timing issue, I think the time hasn't passed because today at 6:16, the board got an email from Shannon Hiller-Webb that restates the organizational risk problems that she's been raising, and that's what's giving rise to the grievance. And all a grievance is required to be is written and delivered to the board. So I believe her ongoing writings start her new timeline every single time she raises it because it's an ongoing situation.
Wouldn't that be too easy just to re-raise issues so it can start a grievance again?
No, I don't believe so. And for example, under criminal law, if you're, for example, repetitively reusing, for example, someone's identity information, personal identification.
Yeah, but there's no harm every time.
Oh, there certainly is if they're withdrawing money from your bank account.
That's why I said there's no harm every time, so it's a new action.
So she's
reiterating the same action that happened
but
in
it's
the email.
but it's ongoing. So for example, every day you fail to register as a sex offender, it's a new crime.
So that's the context that people are thinking about.
I don't think that's appertaining to what we're talking about here, but that's all right.
All right. Don?
I just call a question.
Okay. Okay, the question's been called and we're on the amendment.
We have lots of people that like to talk.
We need to vote on the call for the question.
We have to,
What?
We need to vote on the call for the question.
Okay, so, actually, the question that called is on the amendment that Nancy made, and we need to vote on whether we're gonna actually call this question. All in favor of calling the question and voting on the amendment, say aye.
aye.
Opposed? Okay, we've got 2 opposes. Here, we've got 3, okay. Any abstentions? Okay, we've got 2 abstentions here.
3.
Excuse me. Let's read them out. If we've got Dylan, Becky, Mike, and you're abstaining? Okay, and Katie are abstaining on the, calling the question on the emotion. So now,
Who was the no, though?
Did you get the names for the notes?
I think we did. Rob is a no and you're a no.
And Marie.
And Marie, right, exactly. Okay, let's make sure Janet got all that. Okay, so we are going to vote on the amendment to the motion. All in favor of the amendment to the motion, which is to add the words "or through face-to-face dialogue, mediation, or grievance procedure," say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Michael? Marie? Okay. Any abstention?
I just want to say a final comment.
She's
I'm
just
sorry, I
counting
just
the vote.
thought of it. One-on-one assumes that we all operate as equal in terms of power. And so if it's gonna be between someone of, like, who, there's a differentiation of power, there might be concerns of safety with one-on-one.
Thank you. Thank you.
That gives you options.
All right. And there's one abstention, Mike Lynn's abstaining, and Katie's abstaining.
Katie,
We had
Mike Hill.
Becky, Mike, and Katie are abstaining. Okay.
Those 3.
All right. So now we're gonna go back to the main motion, since it's been amended. Further discussion. Katie, did you want to say something?
Yes, I did. First of all, I don't think the board has the authority to direct board members to file a grievance. Second of all, I recognize that there's a problem. I share your frustration moving forward. I do not believe this addresses it, and that the duty of loyalty is to maintain positive relationships. I'm not sure if the vote is sailed or not, but I think that there needs to be a best efforts on the part of the board. I also acknowledge that the complaints that people seem to have are about you, the chair, and that kind of puts you in an president in an impossible situation to run this next step.
Actually, the whole executive group has been accused of not following the bylaws, so it isn't just me.
Okay.
All right,
So that's,
all right.
you could call a committee as a whole, assign someone to run that committee, refer it back to the group to be voted on.
Okay, that's Rob's suggestion.
Could you repeat it, Rob?
So there's conflict of interest on the people that are running the board. And this has happened since the very beginning of this conflict. Leslie should have recused herself when the minute the email was brought forward to her. Doesn't mean you're right or wrong, it just means that obviously you've been attacked. So you're gonna respond, maybe not in an unbiased way. So in this case, because of all the executive committee, which is the order for which this goes down, happens, you could refer this to as a committee of the whole, so we'd all go into a committee. You can assign a person who is not biased, doesn't have any care either way of who runs it. I would recommend Michael, he seems like he understands the rules. And after the end of that committee, it would come back to you as a vote, as a minute. Is that correct, pretty much as a committee as a whole?
So, Rob, what goes to the committee? What is
This
the committee
discussion.
called?
This
Oh,
discussion.
just
You mean the motion itself,
Yeah, the whole thing, because
not the whole thing. This is a motion to ask Marie and Shannon to file a grievance, mediation, or a face-to-face dialogue to resolve the issues. And I agree with Katie that things should be put back on a better footing. I did offer to do that at the time I wrote the original email. I did it twice. As far as I know, nothing has been reached out to me to even have a discussion. It's just been attacked since the July picnic, quite frankly. But let's ask the board. Do you want to go into a committee as a whole and make a decision about this, or do you, he has not offered it as an amendment.
Well, there's other people.
Right, all right, sorry, Mike, go ahead.
I just had a quick question, because trying to understand, I mean, I'm only here for Ron for,
Sure.
but since the motion was brought forth by Steve, how does that tie into like whatever conflict might be with the executive board as for how the total board votes?
well, the conflict is Leslie's running the meeting, so she can make decisions on who speaks when. She can make, like in the meeting, the special meeting, she allowed someone to go last, had a request to go last. That's the type of bias you can have, even if you don't mean to, you can have bias. Or after Shannon spoke, Leslie stood up and rebutted, made a clarifying comment. So
Okay.
those are the type of things, and it has nothing to do with you, Leslie, it's human nature to do it, right? It's human nature to want to defend yourself. So that's why they make these things,
I
but it is.
disagree. I worked very hard to be impartial on this
I
and make
understand.
sure we follow all the rules
And
and that I
I'm-
had the support of the board behind me. So, Steve, did you want to make a comment?
I honestly do not know what the Robert's Rules context for this are, but I tend to agree with you, Rob, that since the executive board is all under attack, and this motion addresses that problem directly, I think probably that having someone else wield the gavel momentarily would be a good move.
I'm happy to give the gavel to David over here. So we can continue this conversation.
You can't have a simple accusation, take the executives out of it, just an accusation, that's not fair.
It's not an accusation.
So I'm gonna start this real quick. I quit. Have fun. This is the stupidest thing I think I've ever seen.
I would agree.
It's pointless, and my blood pressure, it's not healthy for me to be doing this, so I get with it, I'm sorry. Good luck.
All right, there's a motion on the floor and a suggestion. Dylan?
Yeah, that's disappointing. We have ways to settle these issues. It's in the bylaws. I think clearly this is what Steve's trying to get people to do. I think it's embarrassing that we're sending emails to, 30-plus people when there's an issue with one or two people. That should be resolved either in accordance with our bylaws or directly with that person. I don't need to be called into this and get 100 emails and trying to embarrass other people for things that maybe they were said, maybe they were perceived incorrectly. that's not how you deal with this, it upsets me, and to see Charlie walk out on it, it's even worse. So if you have issues, please resolve them directly with the people, or use mediation or the other.
Kim?
Thank you.
What I see is the emails that have gone around with screenshots and email attachments, essentially a collection of evidence along with written allegations sent to the entire board is a grievance. You can call it a cat, you can call it pajamas, but the substance is a grievance. And I understand Shannon's point that she's saying, I am not personally harmed, the organization is harmed, and I understand that she's looking at it through that lens. But this organization is made up of individuals, and she's essentially asserting the grievance for everyone, saying, we're not in compliance, these things are bad, things are happening. It is a grievance. There's nothing else needs to be filed. It's been served.
All right,
Oh, wait a minute, hey,
Laura?
when I read the bylaws, it says that individuals and groups are encouraged. So one of the things that I'm concerned about as the equity chair is as we continue to welcome people of color or, other disadvantaged groups who are being marginalized to participate, I caution against the face-to-face because there's an unequal power between the parties. And I have issues of safety at this point.
That's why there's an option for
Yeah, that's an option,
No,
and it is provided by the bylaws. So it may be that the bylaws need to be amended to address those safety issues.
Well, no, it just
But
says encouraged, so I'm not gonna be forced into a face-to-face where I personally feel unsafe.
Right,
Okay.
that's right.
All right, we have a motion on the table. We've had a lot of conversation, Michael.
So I think the motion could be worded more clearly. I think the point was well made about, does the board have the authority to direct? And there's also the question of whether or not a grievance is even relevant, since according to the bylaws, the grievance must have been harmed. So I would move to amend the motion that the board recommend that these individuals seek to resolve their issues through the procedures as defined in the Sweeney bylaws.
And what are those, Michael?
Well, those would be, in this case, the mitigation, basically. But that would depend on your reading of the bylaws. So if we just say refer to the bylaws, that allows flexibility as far as the grievance procedure that is pursued.
You want to state your amendment again, more clearly for
Yes.
Janet?
So I'm striking essentially the word direct and replacing that with recommends. And then the naming of the individuals to resolve their issues through the procedures outlined in the Sweeney bylaws.
So, amendment on the floor. So, I missed where it says
Is there a second?
strike, yes.
Is there a second for
I'll
this
second.
amendment? Rob seconded.
Okay.
All right.
So,
It's a different way of coming at the issue because it goes from directs to recommends.
Yeah.
And it ties it into the bylaws, but the bylaws say you should do it by mediation, face-to-face, or a grievance procedure. There are 3 ways to resolve these issues. All right.
Unless it's a whistleblower.
Okay, discussion on this amendment? George?
The word leadership is used, specifically, you're talking about the Sweeney Board.
Leadership.
That's what concerns about, the Sweeney Board, concerns about leadership, or what?
Well, it's not the board, it's the executive committee, isn't it?
Why not say that? The story, I mean, like, years from now, you wanna know who that
So would
really
you like
is.
to insert the words executive committee?
Whoever it is that Shannon is all upset about.
Well, let me tell you what she said in her email. The board continues to neglect to their duty to respond to leadership, capital L. Now, I don't know who she means by that.
So that's why we use the word leadership.
Well, fine, I withdraw, I'm just taking
Kim?
it back then.
I have a question about the amendment. I'm just,
Michael?
I'm wondering how it's significantly or at all different from the current status quo of having the bylaws and we're all supposed to abide by them. I'm just looking for clarification there.
What I'm asking for is that the bylaws be used to address this procedure. So, not stating exactly what is in here through, instead of having a specific prescription for how to resolve it, it leaves it open to the people named to choose their course of action if they so choose. It's a recommendation, it's not a requirement.
So, sorry, I just gotta clarify, because we included every single way with that one amendment that's on the table, of addressing
Well,
disagreements. So what I'm wondering is, are you focused on the word, direct, or are you focused on having all of the options listed out?
I'm focused on both. First of all, I think the word direct needs to be replaced. And secondly, there is the question as to whether or not the bylaws would even allow for a grievance at this time, based on the information that we have. This motion prescribes too much, in my opinion, so my amendment to the motion will allow more flexibility for how the grievant can proceed if they choose to do so.
Okay, and where is it overbroad?
With the use of the grievance procedure, this suggests that it can be used, and there's question as to whether that is indeed the case at this point, either from the time frame or the fact that the grievant may not have been harmed. So basically, it is the specific wording in the bylaws.
So, do you believe that a person must make a threshold showing a prima facie case that they meet the criteria for a grievance before they file one, or is that something that's fleshed out within the grievance process?
I think my opinion is irrelevant to the question at hand.
Well, I think it's the pivotal point of your amendment.
The amendment stands for itself. I think the
Okay.
people can vote based on that.
Steve?
Yeah, I agree with what Michael was saying, with both pieces of it, that it should say to recommend rather than direct, and that we should remove specifics about how the bylaws should be used, but put in a reference to the bylaws instead. Furthermore, and I hope this would be acceptable as part of, directly related to your amendment, is to pull out the paragraph just above there that says the bylaws state Article 11, Section 1, and the text below that, that's an excerpt from the bylaws. In other words, we're going with Michael's general reference to the procedures in the bylaws instead of what I just did here.
You want to remove your reference to the bylaws? Is that what you're saying?
That particular reference to the bylaws.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
All right.
And that's
Okay, so let's back up here. Michael's got an amendment. Steve is accepting your amendment, even though the board has to vote on it, and he's making a further modification to take out the section that says bylaws state.
So the document you've given us says motion at the top, and it includes the bylaws, but really, your motion begins with I move. So that is your motion, and it doesn't really include that to begin with.
That's not quite true.
Well,
The motion also states that the Sweeney Board and its executive committee support equity and inclusion, et cetera. I think that's an important part of it.
That's part of it.
I'm open to an amendment.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
Uh,
just one real quick.
Yes.
I wasn't going to bring this up, but I did receive a text from Shannon, and it's made me concerned for my safety. It was October 15th at 8:15 p.m., and she stated, "I was your friend." And my concern, I guess, is for vulnerable people that we're trying to make feel welcome here, and they don't share the same power in terms of how our institutions operate.
All right, Fran?
We've been throwing all kinds of things on this his amendment or his motion. I'd like to add something saying, I'd like a moratorium on the disruptive meetings, a moratorium on YouTube postings. I came in late, so I don't know if this has already been addressed, but I find that's very offensive. We were told we were being recorded for reference, but then it's worldwide now. And also our votes are worldwide also. I find that's fine, but if people want to find that, they need to go onto the SWINY website. It's always been there. It does not need to be posted on YouTube. I really like the word, I like moratorium. I'd like
So
to
are you-
also shut down the
Are you
emails.
offering to amend the amendment further to say, and include a moratorium on disruptive behavior and emails?
This is
that what
such a
you're saying?
mouthful, I have no idea what I'm asking for other
Should I-
than
should I
a
read-
peaceful meeting.
Maybe I should read what I have, just to
Yes.
go through this. So, it sounds like I'll start with Michael's wording. For the board to move forward on its business, this is the final paragraph there. In support of these and other purposes, I move that the board recommend Marie Tyball, Hillsdale, NA, and Shannon Hiller-Webb, South Burlingame, NA, to resolve their issues and/or concerns about leadership through the procedures outlined in the SWINY bylaws. And that was accepted, that's a friendly
Well, I would, perhaps we have to vote on that, and I have no problem with it. I would, please also note that I'm recommending, along with those changes, we remove the paragraph just above that.
Yeah,
that
and I was
says-
gonna secondarily say that
Okay.
you furthered that to
Yes,
removal of that paragraph.
Okay.
All right, do we have any further amendments or motions? All right. Rob?
You know, and I'm going back to the bylaws things, because there are other articles in the bylaws that talk about whistleblowers. There's other remedies and protections that are part of the bylaws, so I too am a little concerned that by focusing on two elements, we're trying to weigh in on how the agreement can proceed.
I guess what I would come in is with Michael's amendment, it opens up the entire bylaws.
Sure.
So there are
That's
lots
an
of
argument in
remedies. People can file
favor.
lawsuits, they can file a lawsuit for defamation, there's a lot of things that can be done if you tie it into the bylaws.
Can
So,
the board file a lawsuit?
yes. Yeah, they can, because of some of the materials that have been sent to the board. The executive committee or the board doesn't have any, they have their own rights to file their own grievances if they choose. George?
No, I'm sorry, I just had left it up. No, I
Okay,
haven't-
all right, Jackie.
I was so entranced by what everyone was saying.
This may be inappropriate, but I'm gonna take a risk, and I'm going to personally ask Marie, what would help resolve this issue? And I guess you don't have to answer, because this is sort of puts you on the spot, but I would just like to know what would resolve the problem.
My main concern is someone new to the board that I have stated for the record whenever possible that I am concerned that we are putting the organization at risk, because in many cases we are out of compliance with our bylaws and out of compliance with the standards of practice according to civic life. So it's very important for me from a liability standpoint to say that silence for me is complicity, and I can't remain silent.
So every time we make a mistake, then we're putting the organization at risk? I mean, because I don't think some of this is not intentional.
Well, for me,
Wait,
can I?
Yeah, please.
It's directed to Marie.
Go ahead, Rob.
Jackie, can I weigh in?
Yes.
Can I? Thank you. For me, it was like, whenever we had the special meeting, the executive group had the special meeting to talk about the agenda and the agenda timeline. And they clearly talked about a whole ton of stuff that was off the agenda. I had a conversation with Leslie, clearly said that, you know, you guys are breaking Robert's rules, you're breaking our bylaws, and you're breaking only standards. And basically, I was brushed off. So I
told
sent
you I didn't agree with you. You weren't brushed off, I just told you I didn't agree with you.
Okay, excuse me, this is exactly why,
Rob,
It's-
I'm not going to be quiet. I believe most of these people here
it doesn't matter.
expect or want me to say something.
This is, you're speaking to exactly what she's saying, that a chairperson's responsibility is to the minority. Your responsibility is to me when I'm talking, if I'm in the minority in this room. You are to make me feel comfortable. Just like you said, Laura, you are to make me feel comfortable, so I will reach out and talk more. I might influence some people in this room. But when you rebut me and push me down, it creates.
You mischaracterized what I said. Sorry,
And you would,
I am not
and you
gonna
would have
back
a
off.
chance, and you would have a chance to do. So anyway, long and short, this is what happened. So by Thursday, I sent out an email basically sharing with the whole board what my discussion was her, that we are breaking our bylaws by upholding these things that happened in this meeting. And it's important that the board, that the executive group weigh in on this bylaw. Her response back to me literally was, relax, Rob. It wasn't until Sylvia got in that they held the special meeting to review the information. It's that type of thing that concerns me.
So if it's, if it's not intentional, is there a way we can get past this and begin working as a team again?
Sure.
So,
Sure, but it requires her to, in this case, it requires Leslie to admit that, yes, they made a mistake in that meeting, listen to the feedback, do the research, and schedule the special meeting. It wasn't a hard request, I just wanted the special meeting scheduled that the board in vote said we wanted to table. But that's the type of coercion that happens whenever you are at risk of, when you are personally at risk of of a sanction, right? You try to defend yourself, you do, and I don't think you're doing bad, I just think that's personal, that's human nature.
It isn't human nature. We followed the rules, but let me put it to the group. When we had our special meeting, we did it because we'd had our meeting with the whole board and we hadn't gotten to the equity motion. There was a lot of interest in having that equity motion heard. So we called an emergency meeting within the bylaw rules and we held it on Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock. And we let everybody know through our normal procedures channel that that was what was gonna happen. A half an hour before that meeting, Laura said she wanted to provide some information to the executive board with respect to that motion. She told us she wanted to withdraw the motion, she'd been bullied, she didn't think the motion had followed the rules in the committee, and she wanted to withdraw it back. So, would an executive committee who's supposed to be setting up a motion, setting up a time to hear a motion, refuse to hear the chair who says she has more information on it? So we did it, we listened to her.
I hadn't made a decision about what to do. I wanted to wait till Sylvia got back because she's my staff person for
But-
my committee.
That's true, but you
And
told
that's
us
what delayed
you were
it
thinking
because-
about withdrawing the motion. So we were waiting for you to act on what you were thinking about, and that's why
Right,
there was
but I hadn't
silence.
made a decision at that point what to do until I had a chance to.
Fine, that's fine, but we had to act upon the information we had. Does that, if you were sitting as the executive committee and you had a chair come to you and say, there's this new information, you should consider it, whether we have a meeting or not, I think you would consider it. And then what we did is we waited for 4 days to see whether Laura was gonna make a decision about what she was gonna do, and when she didn't, she sent us a note
Point of
and said,
order.
I'm
We had
not
to
going
wait
Point of order, there's a
Yeah.
motion on the floor, this is not discussion for that, a motion that's on the floor.
I don't agree with you.
You're
Your
out
mo-
of order.
your point is not well taken.
Okay.
I bill her
So
decision.
anyway, so
We could go
then,
down
once
this
we knew
route.
that Laura wasn't gonna act, we set up a special meeting as the board had directed us to do. So those are the facts, that's what happened. So let's go back to our motion that's on the floor, and, are there any further amendments to the ones that we've got right now? Dylan?
No, I just want to make a comment. We are doing the exact opposite thing of what the intent of this motion is. And we're continuing to have this conversation in public that needs to be resolved between a few people as the intent of the motion. So can we move forward with the vote, please?
Are people ready to vote?
Yes.
All right.
So what are we voting on?
Would you read the motion again?
Yeah, so, motion as per Steve's writing, to remove the bylaws state section in the writing, and then the motion will be for the board to move forward on its business in support of these and our other purposes. I move that the board recommend Marie Tyval, Hillsdale NA, Shannon Hiller Webb, South Burlingame NA, to resolve their issues and/or concerns about leadership through procedures outlined in the Sweeney bylaws.
All right. Okay, I'm gonna take a vote. Everybody in favor of that motion as written right now?
Is this for the amendment to the motion?
This is for the amendment.
Okay.
All in favor of the amendment, raise your hands. Anybody opposed? Anybody want to abstain? All right. Okay, we got 3, 4. Marie, Kim, Laura, and Mike. Okay? The motion, any no votes? Okay, all right, the motion passes. So now we can get on to the main motion, and we're running out of time here. So I'd like you to raise your hands if you're in favor of the main motion as amended. Okay. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
You can say Maria if you can say that.
And Maurice,
Maria votes yes.
okay, so we have 6.
She can't
No,
vote.
she
Yeah.
can't.
That's
gotta
fine.
be here to
Yeah,
vote.
only if you can do that, I don't know. I didn't think so,
So
but
we
I
have
just thought.
15 for. How many, do we have any opposition to the motion as it's read? Do we have people that say no, they don't want to vote for the motion? Okay. How many people want to abstain? Okay, we have Katie, Mike, Laura, and Marie. The motion passes. To go back to our agenda, I would like to ask permission, because we're way over time, we're supposed to be out of this room at 9 o'clock. Okay, we have 2 more things on the agenda, which is new business, and that is, just want to notify you that we'd like to try to hold a candidates forum in the spring, and we'll be talking more about that, and you guys can vote on whether you want to hold a candidates forum or not, but we got to work early to get dates for people to come and talk to us in the spring. And then the second thing is West Portland Town Center Design Workshop. Catherine's going to talk about it briefly.
Anyway, I have a couple of, well, maybe enough for what we have now, handouts for this. And it's really time sensitive, so I have to talk about it today instead of next month. It's November 9th when they're holding a workshop from 2 to 5 at the Markham Elementary School. There's a lunch served earlier at 1 p.m. And it's an opportunity for everyone to brainstorm about what the future of the West Portland Town Center is. If you're not familiar with that, go on the website. I don't know if I can really take any more time, but I really encourage you to do it. It's interesting to do this. It gives you an opportunity to work with your neighbors, staff, and other community members in envisioning what the town center can look like. And if you're not familiar with it, really go on the website and look at what the layout and the ideas are. They would like to take that Barber Transit Center where they use it now just for parking and the TriMet transfers and transition it into the hub of this town center. And that's what this will be about.
I'd like to add to it, it is really important because this is the main access to get onto I-5 southbound. And if you're not making your voices heard and they put that huge light rail right there, you're never gonna get on the freeway again.
Got it.
And we have to adjourn. We have to be
All right.
out of here by
I-
9:30.